Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
The problem where I worked was middle management, specifically one manager who seemed to think his business degree gave him the right to treat everyone below him like they were idiots. This guy had been with the company for about 3 years and had climbed the corporate ladder by taking credit for other people's work and throwing anyone under the bus when things went wrong. I'd had several run-ins with him before. There was a time he blamed me for a website outage that happened because he insisted on pushing an update during peak traffic hours against my recommendations. Then there was the incident where he took credit for a major client presentation that I had spent 2 weeks preparing, telling upper management it was all his strategic vision. Each time I bit my tongue because I needed the job. But this guy had one quirk that drove me absolutely insane. He constantly misused the word revert in emails. Instead of saying, "Get back to me" or "respond," he'd write things like "please review this" and "revert," or "check the numbers" and "revert by Friday." As someone who actually understands what words mean, this grated on me every single time. Revert means to return something to its original state, not to reply or respond. The opportunity for my revenge came on a Tuesday morning. I was sipping my coffee and going through emails when I saw a message from him with the subject line "website update, urgent." My stomach immediately tightened because anything marked urgent from this guy usually meant he'd procrastinated on something and was now making it everyone else's emergency. The email read, "Need you to update the corporate contact information on the main website. Change the phone number from the old one to 555-0123 and update the address to our new office location. Make sure everything looks professional and revert once complete." I stared at that email for a good 30 seconds, feeling something click in my brain. Here was my chance. He wanted me to revert. Fine, I give him exactly what he asked for. I immediately got to work. First, I made the changes he requested. I updated the phone number, changed the address, and made sure everything looked clean and professional. Then I took a screenshot showing the updated information clearly displayed on the website. I even checked it on multiple browsers to make sure it was working perfectly. Next came the fun part. I reverted the changes, meaning I returned everything back to its original state, the old phone number, the old address, everything exactly as it was before I touched it. I took another screenshot showing the website had returned to its previous version. Finally, I sent him a reply. "Updates completed as requested. Website has been reverted. Please see attached screenshots for confirmation." I attached both screenshots, one showing the changes implemented and one showing the successful reversion. Then I sat back and waited for the fireworks. It didn't take long. About an hour later, my phone started buzzing with messages from other departments saying the website still showed old information. 20 minutes after that, I got a furious call. He immediately started yelling, asking what I had done and why the website still had the old information. I explained that I had done exactly what he asked. I made the changes and then reverted them, just like his email requested. He angrily said that wasn't what he meant and that I knew it. I apologized but said I had followed his instructions precisely, explaining that he asked me to revert, so I returned the website to its original state. He accused me of playing games with him and said I knew what he meant. I told him I wasn't playing games at all, and that I had his email right there where he asked me to revert. I also mentioned that I had screenshots proving I completed both the changes and the reversion as requested. The call ended abruptly. Within minutes, I got another email from him, this time copying several other managers and even a director. His email said, "There seems to have been a miscommunication regarding the website updates. The changes were not implemented correctly and we need this fixed immediately." This was his classic move, trying to throw me under the bus and make it look like I was incompetent. But this time, I was ready. I replied to everyone on the email chain saying I was happy to clarify what happened. I explained that I had implemented all the changes specified in the original email, then reverted those changes. also as requested. I mentioned that I had screenshots documenting both actions were completed successfully, and I attached the original email and documentation for everyone's reference. The response was immediate and glorious. The director called a meeting within the hour. During that meeting, it became very clear that our middle manager had been misusing corporate communication and creating confusion across multiple departments. This wasn't the first time his poor word choice had caused problems. The director asked him if he was telling everyone that he had asked me to undo the changes after making them. The manager frantically said no, that wasn't what happened, and that he had meant for me to respond. The director then asked why he didn't say respond or reply instead. The manager said that everyone knows what revert means in business context. I pointed out that revert actually has a specific meaning. It means to return something to its previous state, which is exactly what I did. The director looked at the screenshots, read the original email, and actually started chuckling. He said that technically I had done exactly what was asked of me. I never had another problem with that manager treating me like an idiot. It started on one afternoon when I was covering for the regular preschool teacher who had called in sick. I was used to filling in for different age groups, so it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. The kids in this class were mostly 4 and 5-year-olds, and I knew most of them pretty well since I'd worked with them before. We were getting ready to go outside for playground time, which is always one of the more chaotic parts of the day. My co-worker was taking attendance while I helped line up the children by the door. That's when this one little girl started acting up. She's normally a pretty energetic kid, but something was different that day. At first, she just started tapping on my stomach while I was trying to organize the line. The taps were so light I barely felt them through my shirt. I figured she was just being playful and would stop on her own if I ignored it. Kids that age often test boundaries, and sometimes the best response is no response at all. But she didn't stop. The taps turned into actual slaps, and they were getting harder. I looked down at her and gently told her that we needed to keep our hands to ourselves and asked if she understood. She looked right at me and kept hitting. Now she was targeting my back too, really putting some force behind it. The other kids were starting to notice and getting distracted from lining up. I knew I had to be more stern. I told her to stop hitting me and reminded her that we don't hit people. She ignored me and kept going. At this point, the hits were actually starting to hurt, and I could see she was getting more aggressive. I raised my voice and told her to knock it off right now. I put my arm up defensively to block her next hit. When her hand connected with my forearm instead of my body, she immediately grabbed her wrist and started wailing, like she'd been seriously injured. The crying was so loud and dramatic that my co-worker stopped what she was doing to look over. I tried to explain to her that this was exactly why we don't hit people, telling her that when you hit others, sometimes you end up getting hurt yourself. I framed it as a natural outcome rather than a punishment, but she just kept crying. Eventually, she calmed down and we continued with our day. At pickup time, I was helping with the afternoon routine when our manager called me to the front office. My stomach dropped when I saw 2 adults standing there with their arms crossed, looking furious. My manager introduced them as the little girl's parents and said they wanted to talk to me about what happened during the day. Her father accused me of hitting their daughter during playtime. He said she had told them I hurt her hand. I explained exactly what happened, that their daughter had been hitting me repeatedly, that I had asked her to stop multiple times, and that I only raised my arm to protect myself. Her mother asked if I was really claiming that their 4-year-old daughter had attacked me, a grown man. Her father said that she was just a little girl and there was no excuse for putting my hands on a child. I said that I never put my hands on her, explaining that I had only blocked her from hitting me and she had hurt herself in the process. They weren't buying it at all. The mother kept saying that their daughter would never lie about something like this, and the father was threatening to call the police and the state licensing board. I was starting to panic because I knew how bad this could look without context. That's when my manager stepped in. She's worked in childcare for over 20 years and has seen it all. She told everyone to hold on and said she wanted to show them something before we went any further. She led us all back to her office and pulled up the security footage from the classroom. The cameras cover most of the room, including the area where we line up for outside time. She fast-forwarded to the incident and played it back. The video showed everything clearly. You could see the little girl hitting me over and over while I tried to redirect her. You could see me asking her to stop, then raising my voice when she didn't listen. Most importantly, you could see that I never raised my hand to her. I only put my arm up defensively when she kept coming at me. My manager pointed out to the parents that they could clearly see their daughter was the aggressor in the situation. She explained that I had acted appropriately by trying to de-escalate verbally before protecting myself physically. The parents watched the footage twice, their faces getting redder each time. I expected them to be embarrassed and maybe apologize for the misunderstanding. Instead, the mother glared at me and said that maybe if I had handled it better, their daughter wouldn't have gotten hurt. Her father added that a real teacher would have found another way to deal with the situation. They didn't apologize to me. They didn't acknowledge that their daughter had lied about what happened. They just stood there giving me dirty looks, like I had somehow wronged them by not letting their child use me as a punching bag. The mother said that they would be looking into other daycare options. My manager replied that it was probably for the best. After they left, my manager assured me that I had handled everything correctly and that the incident would be documented properly. She also mentioned that this wasn't the first time these parents had caused problems. Apparently, they had complained about other staff members in the past for various ridiculous reasons. The next day, the little girl didn't come to daycare, and we never saw her or her parents again. They tried enrolling her at 2 other facilities in town but had issues at both places within a few weeks. Guess I dodged the bullet. If we hadn't had security cameras, it could have been my word against theirs, and that rarely ends well for the accused. I was working as an English teacher at a private language school, trying to save up money while experiencing life in Russia. I'd moved there after college because I wanted an adventure, and boy did I get one. This day was a Friday in late autumn. I was walking back from the grocery store carrying bags of food for the weekend. The streets were busy with evening traffic and everyone seemed eager to get home. I was waiting at a crosswalk when I noticed this expensive German sedan weaving aggressively through traffic. The driver was honking constantly and cutting people off left and right. The car pulled up next to a black Range Rover at the red light. I could see the sedan driver through his window, a middle-aged guy in a business suit, red-faced and clearly furious about something. He rolled down his window and started yelling at the Range Rover. He screamed about how the other drivers were idiots who didn't know how to drive. He demanded they move their piece of junk out of the fast lane. The Range Rover had 3 men inside. They looked calm, wearing dark jackets and sunglasses despite the cloudy weather. The front passenger slowly rolled down his window and asked if there was a problem. The sedan driver said there absolutely was a problem. He called them morons who were blocking traffic and claimed some people had important places to be. The light turned green, but instead of driving off, the sedan driver got out of his car. Traffic started honking behind both vehicles, but he didn't care. He walked over to the Range Rover and started pounding on the hood. He kept yelling about how they needed to move. He bragged about being a regional manager at one of the biggest companies in the city. He claimed he could buy and sell them. The 3 men stepped out of the Range Rover. They moved with a kind of quiet confidence that made my stomach drop. I've been in Russia long enough to recognize certain types of people, and these men had that unmistakable presence that screamed danger. The Range Rover driver said it was interesting and asked if the sedan driver wanted to discuss this further. The sedan driver said he absolutely did. He ranted about how these people thought they owned the road. He said he had news for them. Then he actually shoved the Range Rover driver. That's when I knew this guy had made the biggest mistake of his life. In Russia, you don't put your hands on certain people and expect to walk away unharmed. The Range Rover driver grabbed the sedan driver's wrist and twisted it behind his back in one smooth motion. The other 2 men positioned themselves on either side. The driver told him he seemed to have a problem with respect and offered to help him understand how respect works. What happened next was swift and brutal. The 3 men took turns teaching the entitled driver about what happens when you cross the wrong people. It wasn't random violence. It was calculated and professional. Each hit was precise, designed to cause maximum pain without permanent damage. The sedan driver went from aggressive and shouting to begging and crying within minutes. The sedan driver pleaded with them to stop. He apologized repeatedly and said he didn't know. He begged them to leave him alone. The Range Rover driver told him that now he knew. He said next time the man should think before putting his hands on people. He asked if he understood. The sedan driver sobbed that he understood and kept apologizing. The beating continued for another minute before they stepped back. The sedan driver was on the ground, bloodied and sobbing. His expensive suit was torn and dirty. Cars had been driving around the scene, but nobody stopped to help. Several people had their phones out recording everything. The Range Rover driver told him to get in his car and drive away. He warned that if they saw him again, if he ever disrespected anyone on these roads again, it would be much worse. He said the man got off easy today because he was just a stupid businessman who didn't know better. Now he knew. The sedan driver crawled back to his car, struggling to stand. He could barely get behind the wheel, his hands shaking so badly he dropped his keys twice. When he finally started the engine, he drove off slowly and carefully, nothing like his earlier aggressive driving. The three men got back in their Range Rover like nothing had happened. Before they drove off, the passenger who had first spoken looked around at the small crowd that had gathered. He asked if anyone had questions about what they saw there. Nobody said a word. The Range Rover pulled away smoothly into traffic. An older woman standing near me shook her head. She said the stupid fool got off easy. She added that if he knew who those men really were, he would have stayed in his car and kept his mouth shut. Another bystander, a man in his 40s, nodded in agreement. He said 10 years ago, someone like that would have disappeared completely. At least now the man could go home to his family and think about his choices. I walked the rest of the way home thinking about what I'd witnessed. The entitled driver had assumed he could bully anyone because of his job title and expensive car. He'd picked the wrong people to mess with. I'm a 19-year-old college student, and I've been dealing with hearing loss my entire life. When I was 3, my parents made the decision to get me cochlear implants. Growing up wasn't easy. I had to learn to navigate a world that wasn't always understanding of my needs. Kids at school would sometimes make fun of the way I talked or ask invasive questions about the devices on my head. But my parents were incredible advocates, making sure I had every resource I needed to succeed. By high school, I'd learned to be my own advocate. I knew what accommodations I needed and wasn't afraid to ask for them. When I got to college, one of the first things I did was register with the Disability Services Office. They were amazing and set me up with lecture transcriptions and extended time on oral exams. These weren't special favors, they were necessary tools that helped level the playing field. The transcriptions were crucial because even with my implants, I sometimes miss words or phrases, especially when professors speak quickly or there's background noise. The extended time on oral exams helped because processing spoken questions takes me a bit longer than it might for someone else. These accommodations allowed me to show what I actually knew instead of being held back by my hearing loss. I was in my second semester taking Introduction to Psychology when everything went sideways. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was at the Disability Services office picking up some paperwork. I was sitting in the waiting area when this woman burst through the door like she owned the place. Behind her was this guy from my psych class. I recognized him but didn't really know him. The woman walked up to the front desk and started talking loudly to the administrator. She demanded to speak to someone about the unfair treatment her son was receiving. The administrator asked what the issue was, and that's when things got really uncomfortable. The woman turned and pointed directly at me. She started yelling about why I got special treatment when her son had anxiety and deserved accommodations more than I did. I felt my face get hot. Everyone in the waiting room was now staring at us. Her son looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. The administrator tried to explain that different students have different needs, and they provide accommodations accordingly. She said each case gets evaluated individually based on documentation. But Karen wasn't having any of it. She got even more worked up and declared that it was ridiculous. She pointed at me again and said, I could hear now, so I didn't need accommodations. She claimed it wasn't fair to students who had real problems. That's when I decided I couldn't just sit there. I stood up and walked over. I told her that my cochlear implants don't cure my hearing loss, they just assist it. I explained that I still rely on transcripts and context to fully understand lectures. She told me I should work harder at adapting. She said her son had to cope with his anxiety every single day, and I was just using my disability as an excuse to get ahead. Her son looked mortified and quietly begged his mom to stop, but she ignored him completely. She kept going, saying this was discrimination against students with invisible disabilities. She claimed I got extra time and special notes while her son suffered in silence. The administrator tried again to explain that her son was welcome to apply for accommodations if he had proper documentation from a healthcare provider. She said their office works with all students who qualify, but Karen shot back that they shouldn't have to jump through hoops when I just got handed everything. She said this was exactly what was wrong with the system. I tried to defend myself, explaining that I didn't get handed anything. I told her I've been working with audiologists, speech therapists, and disability offices since I was a child. I said these accommodations exist because without them, I'd be at a significant disadvantage. She dismissed everything I said and claimed everyone has disadvantages. She said her son deals with panic attacks but doesn't get special treatment. The administrator suggested that if her son experiences panic attacks that interfere with his academic performance, he should definitely speak with their counseling center and consider applying for accommodations. Karen got even more frustrated and demanded to know why they should have to prove anything when I just got whatever I wanted. At this point, other students in the waiting room were getting visibly uncomfortable. Her son was practically pleading with his eyes for her to stop. I explained that I had to provide extensive medical documentation, audiological reports, and meet with counselors to get these accommodations. I told her it wasn't a free pass, it was basic accessibility. That's when she said something that really got to me. She asked what I needed accessibility for, saying I looked normal and could walk and talk just fine. I tried to stay calm and explain that not all disabilities are visible. I told her that just because she couldn't see my hearing loss didn't mean it didn't affect my daily life. She wasn't buying it. She said she thought it was unfair and was going to file a complaint. She declared that this preferential treatment had to stop. She grabbed her son's arm and started storming out, but not before turning back to shout that this wasn't over. I was shaking by the time she left. The administrator was incredibly supportive and assured me that the office deals with complaints like this regularly. She told me that my accommodations were completely legitimate and protected by law. A week later, I found out she had actually followed through on filing a formal complaint against me personally. She claimed I was gaming the system and taking resources away from students with real disabilities. The disability office reviewed her complaint and dismissed it immediately, explaining to her in writing why her understanding of disability accommodations was fundamentally flawed. The really sad part came a few days after that. Her son approached me after our psychology class and apologized for what happened with his mom at the disability office. I told him it wasn't his fault. He said he was used to her being like this. He explained that she thinks everything is a competition and someone's always getting something she deserves. He told me he'd tried talking to her about it, but she doesn't listen. I said that must be really hard for him, and he agreed. He admitted that he actually does have anxiety and probably should look into getting help for it. But he made it clear that it wasn't because he wanted to take anything away from me, it was because he actually needed it. I told him the office was really helpful and they'd work with him if he decided to reach out. He thanked me and apologized again, saying what his mother said was completely out of line. 2 weeks later, I saw Karen's son at the disability office. Turns out he did follow through on getting help for his anxiety and ended up receiving his own accommodations. Unlike his mother, he understood that my success didn't diminish his opportunities. There was room for both of us to get the support we needed. I never saw Karen again after that day, but I heard through her son that the disability office had to explain to her multiple times why her complaint was invalid. She tried to escalate it to the dean's office, who also dismissed it and suggested she educate herself about disability rights. I've been working this part-time job at the university for about 6 months now. The job itself is fine, but sometimes they make us go to these social events where we have to mingle with other departments and make connections or whatever. My backstory isn't exactly sunshine and rainbows. During my senior year of high school, right when COVID hit, my family situation completely fell apart. I won't get into all the details, but let's just say I ended up bouncing between friends' couches, relatives who barely tolerated me, and sometimes sleeping in my car. The whole thing was a mess. And on top of that, I got caught up in this really dangerous situation that almost got me killed. I'm talking police reports, hospital visits, the whole 9 yards. It even made the local news, though thankfully, not many people connected it back to me. So from March 2020 to about mid 2021, my life was basically just trying to survive each day. When I wasn't panicking about where I'd sleep that night or dealing with the aftermath of what happened to me, I was desperately trying to keep up with virtual school on whatever Wi-Fi I could find. Then, when I thought things couldn't get worse, I had to testify in court about everything that went down. Fun times, right? Fast forward to now and I'm finally in a stable place. I have my own small apartment, I'm doing okay in college, and I'm slowly working through everything with a therapist. But I still have PTSD from all of it, and sometimes the memories hit me when I least expect them. Last week, my boss told me I had to attend this networking mixer thing. I wasn't feeling great that day to begin with. I'd had a rough night with nightmares and barely slept. But I needed this job, so I showed up with my fake smile ready. The event was in one of those generic conference rooms with fluorescent lighting and stale coffee. About 20 people were there, mostly other student workers and some full-time staff. I was trying to blend into the background and just get through it when this woman from the marketing department decided I looked too antisocial. She came over and told me I looked like I needed cheering up, then dragged me over to where 3 other people were standing in a circle, all holding those little plastic cups of cheap wine they always serve at these things. She explained that they were just talking about COVID hobbies and what everyone picked up during lockdown. One woman had learned pottery, and some guy got really into bread making. Then she asked me what my hobby was. I felt my stomach drop. This question always makes me uncomfortable, but I usually manage to lie my way through it. I told them that I didn't do much, just focused on schoolwork mostly. The marketing woman pushed back, saying surely I did something fun and that everyone had a COVID hobby. I insisted that I really was boring and just focused on school. I tried to laugh it off and take a step back, but she wasn't having it. She kept pushing, saying I was being too modest and asking what I really did. The guy next to her, who I think worked in admissions, jumped in too. He said I shouldn't be shy and that they were all friends there. I told them seriously that I didn't have time for hobbies and was just trying to keep up with my classes. That's when the marketing woman said something that made my blood boil. She accused me of gatekeeping what I did and said everyone did something during COVID. That word, gatekeeping, made something snap inside me. How was I gatekeeping by not having a hobby? How was I keeping anyone from anything? I told her I wasn't gatekeeping anything and that I literally didn't have hobbies. But she kept going. She said I shouldn't be ashamed if my hobby wasn't perfect and that just trying was enough. She said they weren't judging me, with this condescending smile like she was talking to a child who was embarrassed about finger painting. The admissions guy nodded along and agreed, saying they all started somewhere. He bragged about burning 50 loaves of bread before he got it right. The marketing woman saw this and asked again what my hobby really was. She suggested cooking, reading, or fitness videos. They were staring at me expectantly, and I could feel my heart racing. My hands started shaking a little, which always happens when I get triggered. I tried one more time to deflect, telling them I really didn't have time for anything like that, but the marketing woman wouldn't give up. She said everyone had time for something, even if it was just 15 minutes a day. She said I was being way too hard on myself. That's when I completely lost it. The assumption that I was just being perfectionist or modest, that everyone had this luxury, of picking up cute little hobbies during a global pandemic just broke something in me. I snapped and told them they wanted to know what my COVID hobby was. I said my hobby was trying not to get murdered and then begging random neighbors to let me sleep in their basements when they wouldn't let strangers in their houses during quarantine. I told them my hobby was making up all the schoolwork I missed while I was testifying in court about almost getting killed. I said I guess you could say my hobbies were surviving and trying to remember enough details to be useful to prosecutors. The silence that followed was deafening. Marketing woman's mouth was hanging open like a fish. Admissions guy looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. The other two people in the circle just stared at me. I asked them if that was the kind of hobby story they were looking for because that's what I was doing instead of learning pottery. I could feel tears starting to come, which made me even angrier. I hate crying in front of people, especially strangers who think they know everything about everyone's life. I told them I was sorry my trauma didn't make for better small talk. I didn't stick around to see their reactions because I was already embarrassing myself enough. I practically ran to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall, trying not to have a full breakdown. I sat there for probably 10 minutes, just trying to breathe and get myself together. When I finally came out, my boss was waiting by the sinks. She's actually pretty cool. She's maybe 30 and remembers what it was like to be a broke college student. She asked if I was okay because someone said I seemed upset. I told her I was fine, just had a moment. She asked if I wanted to talk about it, but I said not really and asked if I could just go back to the event. But she had a better idea. She told me to take off early and said she'd mark me down for the full time anyway. She added that these things were pretty useless anyway. Instead of just nodding, I grabbed my jacket. When I was leaving, I saw a marketing woman talking intensely with admissions guy in the corner, probably gossiping about the crazy girl who ruined their fun icebreaker game. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.